body for volunteering in New South Wales. Grow communities and bring people together through volunteering.
Welcome to the Local Legends podcast, where we share stories of untold community spirit. I'm your host, Charlotte Bosler, and today we're joined by a very special guest, Leanne Hillman, who'll be sharing her experiences volunteering and becoming the 2023 New South Wales Volunteer of the Year. Hi, Leanne. Welcome onto the Local Legends podcast. Let's start off with, what did volunteering mean for you growing up?
Look, I have to say, in fact, volunteering was not a huge part of my early life. The one time I can remember volunteering was at the kiosk for my brother's sporting events. But apart from that, really, it wasn't until I retired from full-time employment that I took on volunteering. I volunteered initially for an intellectual disability court support service. That was my first experience in volunteering.
So tell us more about that. Tell us about that first volunteering experience and how have you volunteered since?
That was a very positive experience. I was well trained and worked with individual people with disabilities who often were charged by police and needed to turn up at court, and so I would support them in that court process and their families. I then saw an advertisement for a more general court support service, which was the Victims and Witnesses of Crime. And so I applied and started with them in 2009 and have been there ever since.
Fantastic. That's great. So tell us more about Victims and Witnesses of Crime Court Support. What do they do? How do they support members of the community?
Well, we've got around 100 volunteers and we're based in the Sydney CBD and Newcastle and Parramatta. So we're some of the largest courts in New South Wales. And our volunteers provide information and support to victims and witnesses of crime who generally have never had experience with the court system and so are unclear of what is expected of them. And so our volunteers give them information on what to expect in giving evidence. We don't provide legal advice, we just provide information and support. And at Newcastle and Parramatta, we also have a team of volunteers who provide a meet and greet service to all the court attendees.
Yeah, fantastic. So can you tell us about some of the volunteer work you've done since joining the organisation?
Well, I started as a court support officer, and that was at the Children's Court that was at Bajura, which was the court in Glebe. And I stayed as a court support officer for about 2 years, and then I took on a more of a management responsibility. And that was working with other key volunteers in the team of management. And that was about providing support to all of our volunteers, recruiting new volunteers, training, and generally doing administrative functions as well, and of trying to get funding for to keep the organisation going.
Yeah, okay. So it sounds like you've been very involved in a few different roles. What are your proudest achievements?
I think I'd have to say it's about working with a group of volunteers that has developed a very professional approach to the job. We have a very good reputation within the criminal justice system, and that's a very conservative world. And as a group of volunteers, it's a real tribute to the team that we are held in high esteem by police prosecutors, by magistrates. Being part of a very active management team has been a real achievement, and remaining friends with those people as well, which is a part of volunteering. And I think one of the big achievements was actually being able to get some funding to keep the organisation going. And recently, through a very generous philanthropic organisation, we've been able to get money to employ a part-time general manager now, which is excellent for the organisation.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear. And it's good to know that there's that interest as well in victims and witnesses of crime court support. So tell us about any challenges you've encountered. What was the key to overcoming them?
I think one of the major challenges initially was actually getting enough funding to enable the organisation to operate. We were lucky that the Attorney General have given us space in each of the courts, so we don't have any rental that we have to pay. But in fact, in order to get funding from various agencies and also to operate, you do need volunteer insurance. And that's one of the overheads that funding bodies don't provide funds for. So initially when we started, the volunteers themselves had to contribute a membership fee that enabled us to pay for our insurance so that we could actually operate and apply for funding. We have had support from clubs with their one-off funding, which has enabled us to continue to operate. And about 7 years ago, there was a philanthropic organisation that gave us $7,000 a year to operate, which was enough to keep us going, and also gave us some one-off money to enable us to train our volunteers, which is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like that funding has been really important, and finding ways to get that grant funding be successful has been helpful.
Yes, very helpful. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So throughout your volunteering experience, what would you say makes an organisation a good place to volunteer? What have you enjoyed?
I think it's about interesting work that we do. It's very rewarding, and certainly victims and witnesses are very appreciative of the work we do, as are the criminal justice agencies that we assist. I think being able to provide training and development opportunities for volunteers is really important, both in the initial recruitment of them, but also ongoing training, which is what we do 4 training days a year. And that enables the volunteers to meet as well, because often they only see the people that they are rostered on with each week or each fortnight. And by meeting on a quarterly basis, they get to see their other volunteer friends, and a supportive volunteering environment for people to know what's expected of them, to have policy and procedures that are clear about what the role is, but to also have the opportunity for volunteers to actually suggest ways that we could work differently or improve the way that we operate. And it's also, I think, important that we do provide a social environment as well for volunteers, that it's not just turning up to do the work, which is really important, but there are opportunities then for lunches or social events aside from volunteering.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like having input from volunteers, giving meaningful, interesting work, and having clear procedures and policies and helpful training to support their role is really important.
Very important. And also that we provide opportunities for debriefing as well when because there can be quite serious cases that volunteers are assisting clients with. And so they need the opportunity to debrief afterwards as well.
Yes, absolutely. So having those check-ins and that chance to talk about what's going on, pastoral care.
Yes. And we have a volunteer counsellor that's available too, which is great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great to know. And now I want to focus on a very happy moment from last year. So tell us about the 2023 New South Wales Volunteer of the Year Awards. How did it feel to be nominated?
I have to say I was initially reticent when my good friend Maggie said that she was nominating me for the award. because you don't expect it to be a part of why you're doing the role. But I also was pleased felt to be worthy of the nomination as well. So that was very positive, despite my reticence.
Yes, fair enough. And we do hear that a lot, that a lot of volunteers don't necessarily go into it being recognised, but absolutely it's a part of what we can do with the awards. So being then at the regional ceremony with other volunteers, tell us about that experience. What were your expectations going in and what did you walk away with?
Look, I have to say both the regional and at the state's awards, I went with no expectations. It was great to be a part of the experience and to see and hear about the range of roles that volunteers take on. And I certainly didn't expect to win at either the regional ceremony or more particularly at the state award. So I was, and particularly I think because you're surrounded by so many very, very talented and committed people, which is a fantastic experience in itself to be with the range of volunteers that New South Wales has. But I was still quite overwhelmed when I actually ended up winning, and very unexpected.
We definitely get to see all the types of volunteers from across New South Wales. And so you're at the state ceremony and you're announced as the 2023 New South Wales Volunteer of the Year. What was that experience? What did that mean to you?
It was just so unexpected, I have to say. The people at the table I was at were very excited, as was Maggie, who had nominated me in the first place. She came to the ceremony with me. She was also quite overwhelmed that the organisation was able to compete as well with the range of organisations and roles that volunteers took on. So I walked up the stairs quite, I guess, really surreal. It was hard to be, for it to be real at all. And I was just, afterwards, there were so many photos taken, which was in so much smiling that you had to do. But I have to say, what I realised was it was very good recognition of the role of the organisation as well. We're a very small organisation, really, in terms of the volunteer sector. And so it was a real plus for the organisation to have that recognition. Because, in fact, without the volunteers and without the organisation, my role was really insignificant. So it was very good for the organisation as well. And in the afternoon of the award, I went on ABC radio interview. And interestingly enough, I heard back from friends and from the volunteers who just happened to be listening, because I could give no forewarning that was going to happen. And the volunteers said they were actually quite excited to hear that the organisation was equally received the acknowledgements of the award, not just the individual. So that was very positive.
Yeah, so it was a morale booster for everyone on the volunteer team.
It was. And family and friends were very excited about it, and some of whom heard it on the radio as well, because it's hard to promote it yourself about the award. You don't want to go around telling everybody that well, I don't want to necessarily, but I do want to promote the organisation and the team of volunteers I work with.
Yeah, fantastic. And it sounds like you had a really positive response from media and your circle as well. How did being nominated, did that affect your volunteering? Did that change anything with how you approached it?
No, to be honest, it didn't. We were able to use the award in some social media opportunities with our website and our annual reports. But no, it didn't actually affect the way I worked or what I did. But Each time I saw a different volunteer, they were really happy that the organisation had received the acknowledgement that we did.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. And it sounds like it was everyone felt recognised in some way, which is lovely to hear. Did you see any other impacts on your organisation following the award?
The philanthropic organisation, they were very happy with the fact that we had received the award. So it was a bit of a bonus for them and I guess a positive affirmation of their role in funding us. So that was good. Our patron, the board of the organisation was very positive about it. So that was good.
Yeah, that's great. And how does it feel now, 1 year on from being awarded?
It's still a bit unbelievable, really. But it was certainly a very positive experience, despite being a bit daunting.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's wonderful. And what would you say to the next New South Wales Volunteer of the Year?
Well, I'd certainly say congratulations. And it's a great achievement to win amongst such worthy competitors for that accolade. And really for them to acknowledge it's a great recognition for the organisation that they volunteer with, equally as their own contribution was obviously important as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience and what you do for your volunteering. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I'd just like to thank the Volunteer Centre for sponsoring the awards and organising. I know it takes a lot of effort on behalf of the organisation to do that, and it's a fantastic accolade for volunteering.
You've been listening to Voices of Volunteering, presented by the Centre for Volunteering. For resources, tools, training and news, head over to our website volunteering.com.au.